Now, I've seen thousands of trophies in my time, and I don't think I've ever seen one like this. This is probably the most famous cup in the country.
But the money is irrelevant. It's the story. Now, look, these are a wonderful series of early aviation pictures. Now, how do you fit in? What are they to do with you?
This album belonged to my father. He was a pioneer aviator.
What was his name?
Howard Pixton.
Howard Pixton. Is that him?
Yes, in 1910.
Learning to fly at Brooklands. So he's right at the dawn of British aviation.
Too true, yes, yes.
Obviously, as a pioneer pilot at that time, he was very much involved in army experiments. Salisbury Plain, Larkhill, all those great centres of early flying.
Military trials.
The first military trials, so he was involved in that. Now, here are some photographs in Bucharest, 1912. And this, again, these are army trials, aren't they?
Yes, my father was really a major person to demonstrate British aeroplanes overseas.
So, in effect, he was like a test pilot?
Yes.
Yes, as we call it now. I mean, obviously, what this book reveals is that early flying was very dangerous. I mean, here are two serious accidents.
Father said, I hope I never ever see an accident where a plane catches fire.
Yes.
And he did.
He did, yes. Now, as far as I'm concerned, his greatest moment was in 1914, when he was the first Briton to win the Schneider Trophy. Now, the Schneider Trophy, the great international seaplane race. Here we see him just after the race. Now, that's his engineer, I think, Marl.
Yes.
And that's, of course, Tommy Sopwith, the designer of the aeroplane.
Yes.
And there we see the seaplane in flight at Monaco, where, of course, the race took place.
Yes.
Now, this was a great moment. It was the moment that British aviation had to be taken seriously, wasn't it?
Yes, indeed, and because it was recognised as our first international victory.
I think that's right.
Yes.
Until that point, the government, the army, hadn't really wanted to take aviation seriously. But what I like is particularly this image. Here we see a group of people photographed in 1931 for the Daily Mail, and we've got Flight Lieutenant Stainforth, himself, your father, J.S. Wright, and J.W. Street. Now, Stainforth had just won the Schneider Trophy for Britain Forever, the third consecutive victory in 1931, flying Supermarine S6B, designed by Reginald Mitchell, the designer of the Spitfire, at a speed of 407.5 miles an hour. There's your father, brought back as the first winner. He was a great motorcyclist. He drove one of the fastest trains in Britain. Wonderful, 4 speed aces, I suppose. And here was given to your father at the time a replica of the Schneider Trophy. And I'm delighted to see this album because, of course, your father was the beginning of that story. It's a wonderful, wonderful album of memories, album of great British history. I think the whole collection is probably worth £2,000 or £3,000, but the money is irrelevant. It's the story. And I'm so glad you brought it in because you've brought back to life this great forgotten hero.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This extraordinary-looking ram's head is inscribed GPS 1897 1-mile bicycle race, first prize. Now, I've valued and seen hundreds, maybe thousands of trophies in my time, and I don't think I've ever seen one quite like this. What does GPS stand for, and how did it come into your hands?
GPS is Glasgow Police Sports, and it was my grandfather, James Watt Blaine. He won the 1-mile bike race.
Right.
And in the photograph, he's the gentleman on holding the bike.
So he's the one on the left?
He's the one on the left.
Fantastic outfit.
I know.
Well, the interesting thing is that at this date, the 1890s, that predates the Tour de France. It also is pretty soon after the invention of what was called the safety bike. And the safety bike was simply a bike with 2 wheels of the same size, because before that you had the penny farthing, which was very unstable and looks just scary looking at it, let alone riding it. So you're at the beginnings here of British cycling. And I think that's quite important when assessing the piece as a whole. The most interesting thing of all, though, is, do you know what this is?
An unusual item to give to somebody at Glasgow Police Sports. Why a ram's head? And I think that possibly that was part of a breakfast set, and they put flowers in the back.
Well, you're not a million miles away. but it is actually a spoon warmer. And you filled it with hot water, and you put your spoon in this hole at the top here. And when you were using it for ice cream, you could then slice through the ice cream very easily. But I have to tell you, as far as spoon warmers go, and this is, by the way, is made in electroplate. It's not solid silver, it's electroplate.
Yeah.
They nearly always are.
Yeah.
But as far as spoon warmers go, this is one of the rarest, and I have to say, one of the nicest I've ever seen.
Well, my wife hates it. I love it.
No, it's an absolute cracker. It's beautifully modelled.
Yeah.
Probably made by one of the big plating firms like Elkington's, who are based in Birmingham. But it's superb quality. It's very collectible. It's also interesting from the cycling point of view. So, you know, got to come up with an idea what it might be worth. I think it could easily make close to £1,000 at auction.
As much as that. That's interesting.
Well, it's a great piece, and thanks so much for bringing it along.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Now, Norman Brooks is known as the father of Australian tennis. What relationship is he to you?
He's my grandfather. In his tennis career, he won many events, but he won Wimbledon at 1907, being the first foreigner to win Wimbledon, which was considered a mammoth effort, because the British weren't going to let it go easily. And again, he won it in 1914.
Right.
We believe this trophy and the 1914 are the only full-size replicas in existence. Other than that, everyone else has only got miniatures, and I think that was borne out due to the fact that they never expected to lose in 07, so they just made another one, you know, as it were. And then from there to 14, there was no one outside Britain that won it. In fact, even Tony Wilding, who was a New Zealander, he lived in Britain.
Right.
So he got a miniature. But grandfather, you know, got, we believe, the only two full-size replicas. And even when we inquired at Wimbledon, they didn't even know.
Which makes it exceptional, because I mean, I have to say, when I initially saw it, I just thought, well, somebody's stolen it, you know, brought it over here. But exceptionally rare.
Yeah.
Didn't he also, in 1907, win the doubles as well?
Yes, he won the doubles in 07, which was the maiden year, as they say, from the point of view that he was the first man to win it, but he won the singles and the doubles, and which was quite staggering, really.
Purely in financial terms, I would have thought the doubles jug is going to be worth, to a collector, let's put it that way, well in excess of $20,000 or £8,000. The racket, did he use that to win one of the championships?
I'm not sure. I really don't know, but I know that was a racket that he used, but whether it was in that period, I don't know.
But certainly used by him, it's probably $5,000 or £2,000. But what's this worth? I mean, only one other replica known, which you also own.
Yes.
And obviously the original, which is at Wimbledon. Yeah. So a massively important trophy to tennis enthusiasts. It's difficult to come up with the price, but I would think at auction you're talking about a figure well in excess of $75,000.
Yes.
Or £30,000. So a fantastic piece.
I believe grandfather believed these belong to Australia, not an individual.
It'd be great to go in one of the sporting museums.
Yes, it really would, you know, and that's what we'd like to, you know,
Good. I also have a personal interest in this, because I don't know if you noticed, but if I can pick it up here, on the side there is 1893.
Yes.
W. Badley,
yes.
Wilfrid Bradley.
Yeah.
Well, my name's John Badley.
Good.
And he's a distant relation of mine.
How wonderful.
So I hope you don't mind if I give it a quick kiss.
No.
And then do the classic. Thank you very much.
That's wonderful, John.
I'll take it with me now.
It's a real pleasure to meet you. I'm really rather stunned and shocked with what you brought along. What can I tell you about it?
Well, I think one of the things that I find really interesting about trophies generally is how different they can all be, from the tiny kind of ashes, the Jules Rimet, and some trophies are massive and seem to represent the magnitude of the competition. It's a big trophy, but it's a very ornate trophy. Is that because it's a product of its time? Would that be to do with the designs in the late 19th century, or is there another reason why it looks like this?
Well, it's a very good question, because having looked at this fairly recently, I noticed that it's embossed with fruiting vines. Now, why would you have fruiting vines embossed on a football trophy? You would normally expect to see a football stuck on top.
Somewhere.
Yeah. And there's nothing on this to indicate that it was made specially as a football trophy. Now, I might be banned from every football ground in the country for saying this, but I suspect this might have been an off-the-shelf piece, that it was not specifically made. I cannot see why it should have fruiting vines on it, because that was a form of design that was used over many hundreds of years. And in fact, this sort of shape goes back to ancient classical vases from the ancient Roman and Greek times. But here we have a cup of fairly standard, almost bell shape, campana shape, they sometimes call it in auctioneers' catalogues, but with nothing about it that says it's got anything to do with football, except that it's inscribed that it's the FA Cup.
So literally off the shelf in a shop, or
Yeah.
would it have belonged to somebody who donated it?
I think it was probably in a shop. The first FA Cup, which was played in 1872 on a cricket ground at the Oval where Surrey play, that was known as the Little Tin Idol, which is a wonderful nickname. It was made of silver, but that was what it was called. Then in 1895, when Aston Villa won the cup for the second time, they put it on display in a local shop, and with ours, the cup was stolen. So a replica was made, and that lasted till 1910. Then that one was withdrawn because it was discovered that a rival football competition were using exactly the same cup. So in comes this beauty in 1911. Although the marks are completely worn, we know it was made by Fattorini and Sons, and they were Italian immigrants that came to England in the early 19th century, and Antonio Fattorini was the founder of the company. And in 1831, he opened up a shop here in Harrogate. And then they opened up another business in Bradford, and that's where this cup was made.
Made in Yorkshire.
Yeah.
So if this wasn't designed and made for the FA Cup, what would it have been used for?
Well, I think the fact that it's got all these vines and grapes on it, it might have been used as a wine cooler or a champagne cooler, something like that.
I'm sure it's had plenty of champagne inside over the years.
More than you and I could possibly think of, I think.
Is it possible to put a value on something like this, with all that history that you've just described?
I was just going to say, the hardest thing of all about this is trying to put a value on it. This is probably, along with maybe the Wimbledon trophy, the most famous cup in the country. I think quite comfortably this has got to be worth well over £1 million. The highest value piece of silver I've ever valued on the Antiques Roadshow.
Wow.